Path of Exile 2 is bad.
Let's go.
I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of believing. I'm tired of coping.
Okay.
I'm a PO1 veteran. I've played on and off for many years, and I've put over 2,400 hours into the game, nearly all of that being hardcore SSF or softcore SSF, which just means I don't trade.
Okay, so that's starting exactly like most of the bad reviews for PoE 2 comes from a long time PoE 1 players, like very long time, like most of them.
I had a level 96 Berserker who died on hardcore, and I still have a level 90 hardcore champion that survived Ziz's first gauntlet, which is the hardest content PoE can offer. But I'm no pro player. I've never even really beaten an endgame boss. I usually get to red map viability on hardcore and then get bored or die. I'm not saying this to flex, the opposite actually. I'm about as casual as a hardcore player can get, so I feel like I'm the bridge.
Oh, I think I know that guy. I saw this guy several times
when it
in
comes to Path of Exile knowledge. So my opinion is pretty decent when it comes to new players to the game for PoE 2 in old school players that have played PoE for a long time. And also this build completely over.
That's something that most PoE1 players have as an opinion, is like their opinion seems to be always like, my opinion is worth it because I played PoE1 before, when the devs actually said it several times that PoE2 was not targeting the same audience. So it's kind of funny that most of those PoE1 players feel like that their opinion worth more than the new players. I did a comparative first to the second, never do this. I kind of understand why they're doing this. There's two things. First of all, because they played the first one for years, so like in their minds when they play PoE2, that's probably one of the main issues, is they call PoE2 PoE2 when it's not at all the same game. So like people are like predisposed to believe that the second game will be the continuation of the first play wise, which is not the case. It's only story wise, and that's where most players are
I abso-freaking-lutely love PoE1. The endless customizations, the sprawling endgame.
Yes, I can tell.
Spend more time in PoB than PoE. I love learning the game by watching Ziz and learning what not to do by watching Quinn. I love the pointless dramas and the growing community with people like Darth new to the entire scene. In every new season, I can't wait to see the new.
It's not Darth, it's DM. I am Darth.
My point is, I freaking love Path of Exile and everything that comes from Path of Exile.
Sorry.
Chris Wilson, the developer for PoE1, for those who don't know, and it makes me sad that I have to say that, Chris Wilson could pop up on that screen for the next season reveal and tell us that the newest season is literal dog shit. We farm dog shit, we craft dog shit, we sell dog shit.
Wait, that's not true. Well, I think it's subjective, because I never really enjoyed any Path of Exile 1 seasons, like not that much. And The Settlers is the first season that actually made me enjoy the game. I loved it. Okay, whatever. I hope somebody is going to comment your comments on this comment. That's like commentception. There's too many comments on this. Yeah, but too many changes and too many years between them. Yes, I do agree. But the thing is like PoE1 was, it was ongoing for 10 years. So every single player, actually, I think the most problematic thing that made PoE1 players actually anticipate PoE2 as the continuation of PoE1 is because the first announcements they made was that the two games were actually going to merge together and that the end game will be shared, and it actually made some hype around it. They changed their announcement like kind of midway, and they said that now it's two completely separate entities and the end game is going to be different, and like they changed what the plans were, and that's probably why some PoE players are not really happy with it. But I still feel like they did the right thing, because the two games are so different that it wouldn't have made sense in the end.
And I'd believe him. I'd go to the Reddit right now and talk about how excited I am for dog shit. I'd spam Discords with dog shit login. Dog shit would be the new meta, and I'd be here for it. So I want you to keep this in mind during this video, that I would sling dog shit for GGG. I would farm dog shit for GGG.
Okay. So you would still do it? Yeah, now he's showing that GGG announced that the next season for PoE1 was delayed because they had to move around some staff to fix what PoE2 had to be fixed.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I need to make this very clear. This is not a fair and balanced take. If you want that, watch the many videos talking about PoE 2 and its potential. This video is not an unbiased review. This is a video from a man who just spent the last 100 hours dealing with the slowest attack speed in the game, spiders that slow you more than you're already horrific.
Unbiased, but he started his review by saying that he comes from PoE 1. It's only 100 hours. I'm up to like 400 hours now. It's like, okay.
Horrific movement speed. And God, why can't I find where this quest goes? I've been through this area so many times, and the spiders slow me, and dear God, why? I just don't... I will try to keep my cool. But as of writing this, I was stuck in Act 2 Cruel trying to finish this quest. But I think it's bugged or something, and I come across this room. This empty goddamn room I have to load in. Are you kidding me, GGG? This is an actual area called the Looted Vault, and it's empty. And
I remember I told myself the same thing every single time I was entering this by accident, because every single time I'm like, maybe it was just a bug, so I will go back in, and it's always empty. I always get the... They always get me with this one. But I feel like every single one of his complaints are valid, but they are valid from the point of view of your first playthrough. Because all those issues with the spiders, that you're getting slowed down, the slow characters, like you saw me play hardcore several times, it's not an issue for me anymore, because, you know, like I kind of get, you know, the mechanics of the monsters and the bosses, so now I know how to handle them. I'm pretty sure that's, you know, I'm pretty sure that's the issue right now here.
This isn't a fair, balanced take. This is a raw gut reaction to the sequel of one of my favorite games of all time. And before everyone comes at me saying, GGG will fix it, they will patch it, I'm sure they will. But this isn't a review of what PoE 2 will be. It's a critique of what PoE 2 is now. And as of now, PoE 2 is bad.
I completely disagree. I do agree that the review should actually, you know, critique the state of the game as it is right now, which is totally fair. And I'm pretty sure as the video will, you know, as I go through the video, most of his criticism will actually make sense, and I probably will agree with most of it. But I just think the premise of the criticism right now is, like, even though he says it's unbiased, I disagree. I feel it is already very biased. But, you know, let's see where it goes. Let him cook.
Seriously, why is this room in this game? I'm losing my mind. Why would you even code this?
That's funny, though.
Path of Exile is defined as an ARPG, which stands for Action Role-Playing Game. This genre is defined by its top-down isometric view and its focus on two main things: killing enemies and picking up items. Every single game in this genre will have you run around, killing hordes of enemies and picking up loot, and leveling up some sort of skill tree to make yourself stronger so you can kill more hordes, to pick up more loot, to level up more skill trees. It's a game about exponential growth. You start off killing one enemy at a time until eventually you're plowing down rooms of enemies at a time. You can't do any of this without items. Items are where the entire system comes together. And yet, somewhere along the way, GGG got into a boardroom and thought, wouldn't it be fun if we just didn't give players items? Wouldn't that be fun? The first of many misfires of this game.
Okay,
the lack of drop quantity.
Yes, I'm going to disagree. We saw what happened in Diablo 4 with the humongous amount of loot, and you saw what happened in PoE 1, and you saw what happens in the end game. Like, as of now, it just becomes a clusterfuck of loot. This is way too much. I feel like the low drops are actually extremely good for two reasons. First of all, screen clutter. You don't waste your time like to just like look around what it's worth or not. You just pick up basically almost everything because there's no loot. And the second thing is it makes all the loot relevant, because every time you find a piece of gear, you're excited about it. My big problem with Diablo 4 is I'm never getting excited for any piece of gear because there's so much dropping all the time that I just don't give a shit anymore. You know, it's like, it's just, okay, just another piece of gear. So that's where I think in PoE 2's objective of the game to make everything relevant, in my opinion, as like a very old Diablo 1 and 2 player, for me, it's a big W for the game. And it made the experience so much better than having just like a clutter in the screen.
In Path of Exile 1, you get so many items.
Yeah, look at that. Like, okay, it's probably a montage. I don't even think it's a montage. I think it's an actually drop from the end game. Like, look at this. How does that make sense? Like, even with the loot filter, how does that make sense? How does everything drop something? It's crazy. It's just crazy. Yellow drop is better. Yeah, we agree. We agree on that.
So many items. Oh, that is way too many items.
Yes.
And although this is egregiously excessive, there's a purpose for it. There are so many builds and archetypes in PoE 1 that the game has to make sure that something dropping is something you can use. And although there are far less builds in PoE 2, the drop rate is exponentially lower. Here's a picture.
Yes, and the purpose of that is because PoE2, their objective with PoE2 is to make every single build so modular, I would say the term, to basically do everything you want with anything. One of my best builds right now is my barbarian using a quarterstaff and using monk skills. And you can basically do whatever you want. And this is probably one of my best characters so far, and I love it. I totally love it. The fact that the loot drop is lower and you get items that are not necessarily like linked to your build makes you think out of the box and try some things. The only thing that is making you hold back about this experimentation is respecing. This is very limited right now because of the respec costs, but they said that they want to find better ways to do it, and they're gonna overhaul a bunch of things. You know, it's still early access, and that's why the criticism is very important, because it's gonna help the devs to have an external opinion about what's working and what's not working, and, you know, like rebalance things out as they go.
Picture of me in Act 1 of PoE 1. And here's a picture of literally anywhere in PoE 2 during the campaign.
That's good.
That GDG
I love it.
were aware of their lack of items in the game because they introduced a solution that no ARPG dev in their right mind would think of: vendor farming. The amount of people I've talked to and tweets that I've read that tell you to always check vendors because that's where your strongest items comes from is concerning.
Why is it concerning? Would you rather have vendors that actually can give you good gear for once compared to all other games, or just being there for the purpose of being there and doing nothing relevant? Like example, Diablo 4. I never check the vendors. They're basically just there to, you know, for me to sell stuff when I need gold, and now it's not an issue anymore. So basically, I'm never using them. I feel like by doing this, they are making sure that every single aspect of the game is relevant and worth looking into it. I don't always find better gear at vendors. So yes, you should always look at them because sometimes you can find something better, but not always. And that's why, example, gambling in Diablo 2 was so good, because sometimes you can find something very good, and gambling in this game is good too. I just feel that gambling in this game is way more gambling than in Diablo 2 because I rarely find better gear with the gambler. I mostly find better gear in the vendor, and it should be the other way around. I feel that there's still some balance about that, but I don't feel it's an issue. I feel it's actually a very good thing.
A game about killing monsters to get loot. They took out the loot from the monsters and the monsters from the loot. I just go to a vendor now and there's an item waiting for me? Is this fun?
Yes, it is.
Gameplay. Actually go.
It is very fun. And like I said, it's not always the case. Most of the time, you can just rerun some zones and just find better gear. Like most of my legendary items, my uniques that I found, I basically just farmed the first boss next to Clearfell. That's it. I basically killed her over and over again, and most of my uniques dropped from her. That was great. I don't see a problem with that. It's basically like when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's exactly like Diablo 2. When you kill something or you open a chest, Diablo 1 was the same way. It's like in Dungeons and Dragons. When you kill a boss or you kill, you know, like you get into a dungeon and you kill a mob, the DM just roll dice and you find loot or not. That's basically the same thing.
Going to a merchant and buying an item isn't a challenge in a game that brags about being challenging. People say Path of Exile 1 is a hard game. Look at this pinnacle boss content.
One of my finest.
You know what would make vendors actually interesting? Have them be roaming vendors on the map. You find a roaming vendor and you think, great, I think there was
an edit mistake there because he said Pinnacle and he just showed someone buying a gear.
And as far as I can tell, they don't offer anything better than the town vendors. But if they made them random spawns, you'd at least feel like you did something to deserve them. Going to the town and hoping for an upgrade for free that you didn't get from monsters or from a drop is the antithesis of ARPGs, and yet here we are. PoE 2's drops were so bad on release that they had to patch drops into the game. They forgot loot needs to be in their game about loot.
Yeah, I think that argument is in bad faith, to be fair, because they did raise the loot, and most of the veteran players, especially from Diablo 2, did state that the loot was not an issue. It was probably an issue like more in the end game. Don't get me wrong, like the end game for everyone was bad anyway, so I don't think it's worth mentioning. Everybody knows the end game was bad. In my opinion, the end game is still a little bit bad. It's better, but it's still bad, but you know, whatever. We'll get back to it. Yeah, I completely disagree with almost everything he said so far.
And yet even now, there's not enough loot. I'm currently level 58 in the game, and I've been using this item that's level 38 since I was basically level 38. So for 20 levels, I haven't gotten a new...
Okay. He's doing the same mistake as Elon Musk, saying that his item level is much lower than his actual character level, which means that he doesn't really understand how the itemization work in that game. You can have items that require a certain level, but it's not linked to the item power per se. Like one of the best item in the game require level 1 to equip. So that doesn't mean that the level 1 item is bad, and it doesn't mean that it's worse than a level, like, I don't know, like 62 item or whatever. So after 100 hours, he's only level 58. Pretty sure he played different characters because 58 is what my first character was. I never played PoE 1 that much, and I died so many times on my first character, and I did that like maybe under 24 hours. So yeah.
Item upgrade. And this happens for multiple reasons. The first being that nothing fucking drops throughout the game, but the second being sockets. See, PoE 1 had this huge problem with their design. Every item had sockets on them, and these sockets over time became more useful than the items themselves, to where people would only pick up items with good sockets rather than good stats. So throughout the campaign, item stats were essentially useless because people only looked at the sockets. So PoE 2 removed the sockets from items and put sockets into their own system, a completely logical and good thing to do. And then, for no reason whatsoever, they re-added sockets to the game. And these sockets introduced the exact same issue that skill sockets did in PoE 1. You get locked into an item now because of the sockets. But
how? Why would you farm items with the sockets? Like, it's helping for resistances and stuff, and for weapons it's helping for like some damage and whatever, but why would you be locked? It's not like you need those specific sockets to get some skills and get some synergies with skills or whatever. It's not the same requirement. It is not working with the same mechanics, so I don't understand why he's saying this.
Now it's just for an item called runes rather than skill gems, and you can't replace the sockets and you can't get your runes back. When they're in there forever. A quick update, just as of writing this, there's been a patch that fixed this.
Yes, so okay, that's what I was going to say.
Now update the runes. I don't know. I haven't played since the patch, but I heard this is fixed. So credit where it's due. Especially throughout the campaign.
Yeah, it is fixed, and yes, you still lose the rune, but you find so much in the wild that it doesn't matter very much.
Campaign, these runes give you a huge boost in power and sometimes even do more damage than the item itself. For my item here, each rune gives me 20% damage. So my base item is giving me 90% damage, but my runes are giving me 40% damage. So half of my damage is being subsidized by 2 runes. So if I want an upgraded weapon, I now have to find a better weapon that has just as many rune slots, and I have to re-find the runes, but almost every build only uses 1 or maybe 2 types of runes in their weapons. So
yeah, but in a whole playthrough, you can find like several times the same runes. I have like maybe 20 of each in my stash, like from 1 or 2 playthroughs, so it's not a big deal.
You're going to continuously run out of runes for that weapon that fit your build. So you keep running into situations where you may have found a better weapon, but because it's not worth sinking more of those valuable runes into your item, you don't even bother doing the upgrade. In a game that's about finding item upgrades, it's not worth upgrading your item. You're going to see this in a lot of examples, but it's like GGG unlearned the things they learned from PoE 1.
No, it's just not the same game, and it's not targeting the same audience. They're trying something different. That's why you feel this way. But I just feel he's been unlucky by finding gear and finding runes and stuff, because as you can see, like when you're watching me play, I have a bunch of everything. So it's not a big issue. It's even less an issue since they fixed the loot, like not even a week after the game came out, so...
It's like Chris had this dirty little secret of how to make his game succeed that he refused to give Johnny, or whatever the fuck the PoE developer's name is. I refuse to refer to you on a first name basis. We are not that close. You are no Chris. GGG knew the socket problem, and that's why they removed sockets from items. And then somewhere along the developing process, they thought, hey, let's just reintroduce that problem. Why did we ever get rid of it? And I'm just so confused as to why they make the same mistakes that they've already fixed.
Because it's not a problem.
That bad. At least we finally have in-game loot filters. Oh wait, never mind. That's just no drops in the game. We still don't have an in-game loot filter in the year of our Lord and Savior 2025. How are games like Last Epoch actually showing up PoE 2? It can't be that hard to code in. I just don't understand. Why wouldn't you build in a loot filter from the ground up? I have been saying this for years about PoE.
I think it's because most of the the resources they are putting in place are for the base game. They will need to have a team that are actually taking track of everything in the game, and they are upgrading and changing so much things anyway right now that it's probably not worth it to have a loot filter. I just wish they would had one like once the game will be completed. That would actually make sense. There's probably other reasons why they're not doing it. I don't know if they did address this issue in the past, but I'm pretty sure there's reasons for it.
PoE 1. I am not just a mindless shill of PoE 1. I will criticize it where it's due. And the fact that you have to go to a third-party website to download, I will for years about PoE 1. I am not just a mindless shill of PoE 1. I will criticize it where it's due. And the fact that you have to go to a third-party website to download a filter to even be able to play the game at a competent level is unforgivable game design. Imagine loading up Stardew Valley and the game is like, hey, first you need to go to bumbleass.cock to download items to see the fruits and vegetables. And you don't even have to imagine it. Think about how
that's kind of a good comparison, though.
When you launch them, they immediately bring up the imagine it. Think about how many games have failed on Steam because when you launch them, they immediately bring up the Ubisoft launcher and then they get downvote bombed on Steam because people hate that shit. No one wants to deal with a third-party app in your way. And yet GTG thinks it's okay to send us to a third-party website to download a loot filter just so we can play the game? And PoE 2's solution to that wasn't, oh, let's just create the filter in game. It was, let's just give them no drop so they don't need a filter. I feel like I'm going crazy.
Yeah, no, it's not the purpose of giving no loot. It's not to address the issue of the loot filter. There's actually other purposes about that I said it earlier, so.
Whose idea was that? And then when we finally do get items, you have to carry around identifying scrolls to be able to see what it is, or worse, a hooded man in town who identifies them? Are you
Yeah, see, it's a resurrected Deckard Cain. What's wrong with that? I love it.
Actually serious right now?
Leave my Deckard Cain alone.
My brother in Christ, you are better than Blizzard. Stop copying their homework from 1999. The reason filter
this is good. I love it. Keep doing it.
Is because items drop identified, so you can sort for affixes you want in your loot filter, making looting easier and more rewarding. You can make sure that you're picking up things for your class or things that you want to disenchant for crafting because you're positive that you're not missing any items because items drop identified. And yet for some stupid reason, GGG is obsessed with this dumb process of clicking the scroll onto a piece of equipment to see what it does. I already looted the item. I don't understand. Why are we doing this thing from the 90s that
What's the problem with this? You find a piece of gear, you don't know what it is, so you're excited to know what it is, and then you go to the identification guy, and now you can see what it is. I don't see a problem with that. It's actually giving you an incentive of wait. Like, that kind of a feeling of excitement to don't know what it is. It's like a slot machine, but for nerds.
Was invented. It doesn't give me the feel of a game that's improving. Rather, a game that's gotten comfortable with their system that worked a decade ago, so they keep it without asking why it's stupid. But let's say finally a piece of armor does drop that happens to be rare, you've identified it, and it's good. Now there's a whole nother issue, because one of the only things that matters on your armor pieces is resistances. See, Path of Exile is built around having to have 75% all resistances. This is not
that's actually not 100% true, but it's kind of true.
In order to survive, and then anything above it is good. But in PoE 1, there are ways to cheat resistances, especially while leveling. On the passive tree, through auras, or even through flasks if you're on softcore. But PoE 2 has no way to get resistances outside of just your armor, making so many stats on your items useless.
Well, actually, that's not true. If he spent more than 100 hours in the game, he would know that in the passive tree, there is a bunch of resistances there. There's max resistances that can be added. Your charms can help you having some resistances temporarily when they're triggered. You can add resistances so many different ways with your armor, yes, but through the runes, there's so many ways to add resistances. Every time I'm playing hardcore, before I go and fight a boss, I always look at my resistances and I try to find a way to cap my resistances, and I always manage to do it no matter what. Like, it's very rare that I'm not capping my resistances before a boss, so it means that all the mechanics in place are kind of balanced for me to be able to get those resistances that I need to beat the boss. So I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of frustration from that person that is coming from probably from just bad luck from the game.
Because you're so hard pressed for resistances on armor. But you know what does give you resistances? Runes. The socket problems continues in armors again, not just weapons. I'm using level 19 boots on my level 58 character strictly because it has life and 2 resistances. Because those are the only things that matter when you pick up an item. It doesn't matter if
No, that's not true. All other stats do matter. It just matters a little bit less when you don't have those specific stats that you want. But there's always ways to modify your item to get the stats that you need. And like I said earlier, the level of the item has nothing to do with the power of the item. Most of the time, it's just the range of the rolls, but it doesn't impact the quality of the item that much.
Is good because the armor stat is literally useless. I'm not going to talk about that in detail because people have done many videos talking about armor in this game and why the armor stat is literally useless. There are so few actual useful stats that you
for those who are not aware, the armor, the way it works is that you have diminution returns the more armor you got. So example, if you receive like, I don't know, like a bunch of little arrows and you have high armor, you will have a lot of resistance to physical damage for those hits because they are smaller hits. But if you get, example, like 1,000 damage hit, your physical resistance will be way lower than if you get hit several times by small hits because of the way the armor works. I don't have all the information right now to give you like a specific course on how the armor works in PoE 1 and 2, but that's pretty much the gist of it.
Need from armor in a game about making choices and where loot needs to be interesting. I mean, how do we still have thorns and light radius and stun threshold? There are just so many useless stats on armor in a game that's not dropping you much armor. But let's move on. At least we can hold out for uniques. One of the cornerstones of ARPG.
He's very stuck on there's no loot. Like, I think it's the thing that he repeated like countless times since the beginning of the video. It's basically the only thing that he's actually stuck upon. I feel that is like narrowing his vision of what's going on with the game because he's stuck on this only thing. Well, he lies on some points, not good. I don't think he lies. I just think that he's not seeing what's actually happening because he doesn't have enough hours in the game and he didn't have time to experience everything several times because he's only level 58. Like I said, probably he's got a different characters or whatever. I don't know. He didn't state. He just said that he spent 100 hours in the game and he's only level 58. So I'm wondering what he did in the game for 100 hours being that low level. So like, I don't know. Maybe there's no information that I'm missing that he did not share, but you know, whatever.
These are unique items. These are items that completely alter your build and allow you to completely build your character around them. And oh God. Oh, why is this so bad?
That's true, though.
Who could ever use this? Why do they keep using the word reduced? What'd they do to my boy? This was this helm in PoE 1, an actual viable mid to late game item. And this is what we have now? But hey, it's okay. There's a patch that will fix these uniques. And
yeah, that's what I said, yeah. On that, I do agree 100% with what you just said. The unique items that you find, most of them are very, very bad. Example, like this actual unique, I used it several times early game, and it's great early game. But once you reach, I don't know, like level 10, 15, like sometimes 20, it's not good anymore. So, but it's a beta. Yeah, that's why they're fixing it. You know, it's early access. So yeah, they're taking into consideration the criticism. So that's a good thing because many people complain about that. So
I'm tired. Back in 2023, a small indie company made an ARPG by the name of Diablo 4. And for some reason they decided, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we made every level backtrack? Gamers love that design. And to no one's surprise but the developers, everyone hated it. It was unanimously the biggest complaint people had.
I know where he's going with this. He's going to criticize something that has been patched, fixed already.
Thought, yes, finally someone gets it. And they took it to the extreme. Every level we backtrack on now. Every area we backtrack on. Hey, let's make the map mechanic rely on you having the clear rares, forcing you to backtrack every level.
Okay, here's a question. Do you prefer this kind of level design that you need to explore and never knowing where you're going and having to backtrack using now the checkpoints because they added checkpoints to fix that issue temporarily? I'm pretty sure they're going to fix it like differently somehow or whatever. Or like Diablo 4, now that they fixed the backtracking by making basically just a tunnel every single time. Now it's just a tunnel. There's no exploration. You don't feel like you're in a dungeon or a maze trying to find your way out. That's the good part of it. I love that part. You never know where you need to go because you're exploring. And that's part of the adventure. That's part of the immersion. That's how I feel about it. PoE 1 players would disagree or whatever, but I feel like in PoE 1 as well, it was kind of the same thing. You know, it's like you explore the area and you need to find out where you need to go. So
wouldn't that be fun? Everything we get to backtrack on. There is so much goddamn walking in this game. You spend so much time not fighting and not looting in a game that's about fighting and looting. Let's be honest with ourselves for a minute.
So
Let's
angry.
be really honest. If any other game did this,
I like the exploring part, but some maps are huge. Yeah, especially in the end game. But now they added, they said they were adding checkpoints in the end game temporarily. I feel like the maps are still like maybe 33% to huge. What's up there, George? So yeah, so for me, exploring is very good. I love it. I just feel like the maps, like I said, are maybe just 33%, a little bit too big. But at the same time, like since they huge, yes. So, but since they added the checkpoints, even though some people feel it's only a band-aid or just like some temporary fix, I actually enjoy the checkpoints. I think it's a good idea, and I wouldn't mind if that was like the final iteration of the mapping, whatever.
Diablo 4, hello. We'd make a video criticizing it and saying PoE bad, but because we like GGG, we give them a pass. That somehow, in a game designed about killing and fighting, we spent 30% of it backtracking. And don't get me started on Act 2. The moving cart thing is really freaking cool, but dear God, this level is a mess. You have to move the cart to go to certain places, and certain areas bring up the sub-map within the map, and you have to figure out what connects and what doesn't. It's a freaking mess, man. Act 3 has some of the longest levels in game design ever, just ever. It's just the same shit area over and over and over and over. The level design is cool, but it feels like it's just padded out to be as long.
Yes, I totally agree with everything you just said. That's true that Act 2 with the card is extremely cool, but I just feel like there should be like a more efficient way of using it, because right now it's just like you need to click on this to go there, and then you can click on the thing, and then you can tell it's like, yeah, it is very tedious. And with Utsal, you know, my beloved Utsal, yeah, that's basically the same thing that was happening.
As long as possible to pad out game time, if I'm being honest. Every level wears out its welcome in terms of length, and I'm actually dreading seeing X4 through 6 if this is their level design philosophy, to make every act longer and more convoluted. So far, we have the unsurprising level design of Act 1 Forest Town, Act 2 Desert, Act 3 Temples. So if Act 4 is some sort of hellscape, I'm actually going to lose my shit. And Act 5 will be snow. Imagine how original that would be.
Well, to be fair, it's basically the same thing with every ARPGs. Since Diablo 2, every ARPGs are putting like forest at the beginning and then sand and then jungle. It's like every ARPGs are doing this.
Remember when I said that the defining features of this type of game are killing and looting? Well, the reason that these two repetitive things aren't repetitive is because of choices. As players, we choose how we want to kill enemies. We choose what items we want to equip, and we choose how to progress our game and what content to do. Well, once again, GGG went into the kitchen to cook an abomination of an idea and said, what if all the choices were bad? The passive tree is neutered. Half the shit on it is so laughably bad that the only thing that matters are damage and movement speed. And once again, Path of Exile 1 already solved this problem.
I do agree and disagree. I just feel like most of his criticism are made in bad faith because it's not PoE 1. That's how I feel about it. I just feel he got frustrated because he was unlucky or whatever, and you know, that's how I feel about it. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel. I've been playing PoE 2 for a while, kind of waiting for my druid. Yeah, everyone is waiting for the druid, man. I totally get it.
Not only do they have a really cool choice system where when you get the last point of a node, you can get a specialization, but you can only choose one of like 5 specializations for each cluster. So you naturally have to choose not just the tree, but a specialization on the tree. But that's just a small thing that they could add in the future. But PoE 1 learned that the best way to make players choose between two things isn't to make one thing worse than the other or to give it downsides. It's to make both things really good. Path of Exile 1 makes you make choices by making everything good. There's no way to get everything on a character.
Can this dude just play PoE 1 then? I agree, but at the same time, I know where he's coming from. You know, he wants to help to fix a game that are not targeting the same audience. And I kind of understand that when you're trying to build a new game from the ground up, even though you learned from your mistakes from the previous games, since the mechanics are so different, you cannot apply the same learning curve that you got from the first one to apply it on the second. You still need to do some trial and error with the new mechanics since you're building a completely new thing. I do agree to some extent that some of the issues are probably could have been avoidable if they based their knowledge on the mistakes they made in the past. But at the same time, I just feel that the game is so different that there's some things that were like just was unavoidable. That's what I feel about it.
Charges, onslaught, fortify, all res, movement speed, rage. When making a character, there are so many things that you are trying to force into a character at once, and the choices weigh themselves out naturally because every choice is good. In PoE 2, they just said, fuck you with every choice. Rage is impossibly difficult to get because monster density is non-existent. Onslaught is non-existent. Is Onslaught even in the game? I'm not sure. Fortify doesn't exist. All res increases don't exist. The only thing that matters when making a build is damage, and there's just no other option for anything else than damage.
Yeah, what I do agree with what he's saying, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of things that they are going to add. Like, example, they made this early access to make sure that they can balance it out as the game goes, right? Like, in my point of view, if I was a developer, I am not, so there's a lot of knowledge that I don't have to have, like, a specific opinion on it and be, like, 100% sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that I am right on this. But I kind of feel like if you take the idea broadly about anything that you're doing in life, you can't put everything at once, right? You need to go with layers. Because if you put everything at once, what you're going to have is just a mess, right? There's a lot of things missing because they are going layer by layer. So right now, they're putting some content and they're balancing it out. Once that will be balanced out, they will add the other things. Now they're going to add more classes. They're going to add more weapons. And progressively, they're going to balance it out until it's to a stable point where everyone will actually be happy about it, or at least not frustrated at it. Yeah, that's what I understand of their development process right now.
Even on skill gems they do this. I'm playing Earthshatter, which launches up these little spires that explode when I Warcry, and it would be really cool to launch up more spires. But if I put this skill gem in it that gives me more spires, I get reduced attack speed and reduced damage, so much to the point that there's no point in using this skill gem, because GGG is obsessed with making the negatives built into the game. They want to punish you.
Yes, but actually, when you have more, but you reduce the damage, you can actually counterbalance this by calculating how much damage output will be there. Like, example, if you reduce the damage by 20%, but you raise the amount of it by 50%, you end up still doing more damage. So, it's like, I just like made up, rough numbers right now because I didn't see the specifics of what he's saying. Just look into it. Just, do math.
For every choice you make. And that's one of the most offensive things to a veteran PoE player, is their insulting lack of decision making when it comes to builds. PoE 2 tried to get really spicy in the kitchen.
Math, oh my god.
Build designs, that they forgot that players are the ones who want to cook. All builds have this sort of pre-built plan build that works. For melee, there's a rolling slam that builds up a lot of stun, and there's Bone Shatter that consumes that stun to do a lot of damage. I naturally went this early because it just makes sense, but that's the problem. It made too much sense. Every other warrior during the campaign did this exact thing, because if something makes too much sense in a...
I never used Bone Shatter. I never used the other skills that he named. I was basically a Perfect Strike and... No, the Landslide, I don't remember the name. I have 400 hours in the game. I don't remember the fucking name. That's crazy. But I was not following builds. I don't know. Let him cook.
Powerful, everyone will use it. And I know people will defend this by saying there's not many skill gems in the game, and this will be fixed with more skill gems. But I want to make this very clear. This isn't a skill gem issue. This is a game design choice. They could have made Bone Shatter a generic strike skill that you could augment through skill gems, but instead they gave Bone Shatter a very specific purpose. And this is one of my main complaints with PoE 2. The developers decide how you are going to use skills, not me. GGG wants to control your builds as much as possible. They want to make sure you're using the correct mix of skills by incentivizing heavily mixing those abilities. It's so obvious, it's frustrating. This is veering dangerously close.
I completely disagree, because in Diablo 4, your skill tree is basically just, it's linear. You choose whatever you got in that specific area and that's it. There's nothing really that you can synergize, you cannot mix and match. There's so many things that you cannot do with the skill tree from Diablo 4. And that's what I said, that it was missing from Diablo 4, because example, like I always get back to Diablo 2, but in Diablo 2 you could synergize your skills. If you were the druid and you wanted to use Inferno, you could, you know, the Firestorm, whatever, and every single point that you put in each skill would actually make the other skill stronger, which is not the case in Diablo 4, which is one of the reasons why I feel like I wish there was more synergy in Diablo 4. And I actually enjoy the fact that most of the skills in PoE 2 you can just mix and match. My warrior right now, it's a battle monk. It's not even a warrior. It's not even a monk. It's a warrior with monk skills and monk gear, and it's so freaking good because I can use the passives from the warrior and add some skills from the monk and just mix and match them. And even though it's not made to actually work, it does work. You need to think out of the box. But if he criticized the game because it's not PoE 2, why he's still playing? I don't know if he's still playing. Probably after this review, he did stop. I don't know. But early access is to give a small opportunity for the players to play the game, give the reviews for some changes they need to do, and after make some changes on the future and give a better game after the reviews. Yes, I totally agree, and that's why he's doing this. So I don't think he's doing this just to bash on the game. I just feel like this person wish that the game was better because he's coming from like you saw earlier, like a 2,500 hours in PoE 1. But I think he's basing most of his criticism on PoE 1, and he's basically just using this as the foundation of his opinion. It's a mistake. You shouldn't do this. I know why he's doing this, and I know where it's coming from, but this is a mistake.
Into Diablo 4 design philosophy, where developers want to control player behavior as much as possible so the developers can make sure you're having fun. This is the antithesis of Path of Exile 1 and my biggest issue as a whole with Path of Exile 2. The devs are trying desperately to control how we play the game. PoE 1 is all about breaking the game. The entire goal of a player of PoE 1 is to see what you can get away with and how unethical you can make a build.
You can see, he just explained exactly why he doesn't like PoE 2, and I completely disagree that the devs are actually controlling what we need to do in the game, because that's not true. You know, like I said, I can just do so many things different, like, you know, it doesn't really matter. He just wants a game that he can press a button and break everything. Like right now, it's still happening in the end game because most of the higher level players are doing this, and they think it's basically boring to do so. They think it's boring to actually melt everything. They actually like the challenge that the game is bringing to the table. The bosses are challenging, the mobs are challenging, the mechanics are fun, the combat system is extremely engaging, and that's why I prefer PoE 2 than PoE 1.
There's a reason one of the most popular builds in PoE 1 is a build where you literally just walk around and everything dies. But GGG is so obsessed with
making sure
you play PoE 2 the way that they want you to play that they dilute down decision making.
Okay, let me break down what you just said. Let's listen to this again.
Build. There's a reason one of the most popular builds in PoE 1 is a build where you literally just walk around and everything dies.
How is that fun? I understand why it sounds fun, but after a few hours, wouldn't you get bored to just walk around and pick up stuff? It feels like there's nothing really going on. It's boring when you just run fast and everything dies. Yeah, exactly. That's what I feel. At some point, like if you get to a lower level zone, or if you get more powerful than your zone and you do this, it kind of makes sense. But it's always a good thing that you always get something that makes your gameplay more challenging and more challenging. I feel like just going around and melting everything, for me, is very boring. It just feels like I said in my last video, just go play Call of Duty if you just want everything fast, you know, right? Or play PoE 1. That's exactly the target audience for PoE 1. That's it. Those players, that's why they say, if you prefer PoE 1, stay in PoE 1. If you prefer PoE 2, stay in PoE 2. PoE 2 is not PoE 1 2.0.
But GGG is so obsessed with making sure that you play PoE 2 the way that they want you to play that they dilute down decision making.
Okay, GGG are so obsessed by making you play the game how they want you to play. First of all, they are designing a game. So obviously the developers want players to play the way the game is supposed to be played, right? No, that's my take on it. Second of all, I like the slow gameplay. Yes, this game is made to be slower so that you actually have to think about what you're going to do. And it's adding the challenge to the game. And that's why I like PoE 2 so much. It's because it's actually making me think out of the box about everything that's happening. Like example, you're going after a boss for the first time. You don't really know what's going on. He kicks your butts like 100 times in a row, and then you kind of get it, right? And after the fact that you get it, now you know the mechanics. Now you can actually use strategy to beat the boss. After, you can analyze the gameplay. You can analyze the elements that he's using, the elements that he's using against you or he's resistant to, and you can basically just change your build, change your items, farm other zones to get better items to over level. You can do so many things, and that's why I prefer this type of gameplay than PoE 1. PoE 1, like, it's 1,000 folds better than Diablo 4. Like, you know, it's like, it's not even a contest or whatever. Yeah, I just feel like his impression of the game is completely only based on PoE 1. And I think it's kind of funny that his first minute of the review, he said that this review will be unbiased because he's got so many hours in PoE 1 that his opinion is actually valid. He's not unbiased at all.
Levels horrifically long and pre-built builds to make sure that you play the game rather than break the game. PoE 1 is like a kid at a skate park, breaking all the rules and doing what you want in cool ways. PoE 2 feels like a drudge through a museum. Sure, all the fixtures are nice, but I can't do what I want to do. And that's why I play PoE, to do what I want to do.
Then go play back PoE 1, that's it. That's what they said.
Crafting.
Yeah, I feel he's just angry that he cannot do whatever he wants. So probably this is the kind of player that hates Dark Souls. He probably hates Elden Ring as well. Like, there's no real way to break Elden Ring. Like, yes, there are ways to break Elden Ring, but it's specific builds, it's specific things, and you cannot just go around and kill everything like right off the bat, like basically when you just reach the end game in PoE 1 like he's doing. And I feel that's his issue with the game, is that he just can't go around and kill everything, which is kind of weird because I just feel he's just too much low level for doing it. Because if you look at like the big PoE 2 players that are like doing hardcore at like level 90 plus, they are complaining that the game is just you press a button and everything dies, which I disagree because I'm not that at that level. I never found any build that are actually doing this, which is good in my opinion, but this is still a problem in that game. There are still players that are doing that melting walk around thing. So that's why I'm saying that he probably doesn't have enough hours of experience in the game. Slow gameplay, getting waves to kill, taking time to kill everything. That's fun. Yes, I love it. Try Elden Ring, but didn't like it. Oh, that's good. That's okay. That's the kind of game that takes several tries to actually enjoy it. Like I tried Dark Souls like a few years ago. I didn't like it at all. I was just like, what the freaking fuck is that game? It's like, why do people like to suffer? And then I played Elden Ring and I was like, okay, now that I'm a little bit older, I get it. And now every single game I'm playing, if it's not challenging at that level, I just don't like it as much. So I just feel like it's challenging myself to become a better player. That's why I'm playing hardcore in most games. That's why I'm playing hardcore in PoE 2. That's why I'm playing hardcore in Diablo 4. Diablo 4 is not a hard game anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But we know what I mean. Slot machines.
If I wanted to take a really good item and craft it into something special, I would start by taking my item, crafting the quality up to 20%, 6-socketing it, and then getting 6 links in it. A very simple, easy process that doesn't take any time at all. And then I would go to beast crafting. Create a copy of it, take it to the temple and double corrupt it. Go to the harvest bench and re-roll items for a higher outcome to get the affix I want. Go lock prefixes for 4 beast craft again because I don't know how crafting works. Predict an outcome. Scour it. We're gonna start over. Create a copy of the temple. Video. I need I don't even use it.
I didn't really enjoy crafting in PoE 1. Probably just because I was not used to it as much, but I just didn't like it.
Scour it, it's trash. Just say with Exalt and Pray. Crafting doesn't actually exist in PoE 2. It's just picking up a rare off the ground with extra steps. So in PoE 1, GGG removed bench crafting from Ruthless mode, which is basically just what PoE 2 is skinwalking as. And bench crafting is just a way to get one single deterministic affix onto an item, which means that for some godforsaken reason, GGG believes that any deterministic crafting is bad for their game. And just like, why? Like, why do you hate us? Why do you hate the idea that players want to be able to do stuff with their items and have deterministic outcome?
Actually, for the crafting system, I do agree, and I do disagree on some points. The point that I agree is, yes, the crafting is basically almost non-existent in the game. But where I will disagree is, I just feel like the crafting, the way it works right now, and they said that they were going to add more ways of crafting in the game, so they're going to add more benches and more stuff and whatever. They're just like I said, they're putting layer by layer, right? I actually enjoy the crafting system in PoE 2 way more than let's say like Diablo 4, because I feel like when you're adding affixes to an item, it doesn't break the item because the affix is not already there, right? It's not like you're using a chaos orb or whatever. And it's not like you're re-rolling something, like example in Diablo 4. In Diablo 4, when you want to add an affix, they give you the list of the 3 things that you can get, and then you re-roll your thing like 7 times, and you never get what you want, and then you use a restoration scroll that can be used only once, and if you waste all your re-rolls, your item is bricked, which kind of sucks, right? But in this game, you can add so many affixes on an item, up to 6, 7, that I feel like it's not a big deal, and I never got frustrated at the system so far. So I just feel like once they're gonna overhaul the economy of the game and they're gonna add more systems to crafting, I think it's gonna balance itself out. I just feel it's way too early in development to actually have a definitive opinion on the crafting system for now.
It fills out weaknesses in our build. Remember that issue I was talking about earlier with resistances? This solves it. Bench crafting solves it. And yet they just don't like it. I don't know why. PoE is a game that requires you to have so many different things going for your build. Mana for skills, life to survive, all your resistances, armor, evasion, energy shield, a way to remove bleed, corrupted blood, shock, freeze, curse, additional movement speed, fortified rage, onslaught, and so much more. And GGG is like, yeah, we don't want any of that to be deterministic. It's all...
Yeah, but you're comparing something that has been in development for 10 years and something that is completely new. I know it's the same developers and it's the same kind of continuity, but it's not the same game at all, and they are building everything back from the ground up. So it's like, I feel it's, it's in bad faith for now.
Just a random crapshoot. You know what? I'm gonna say it. Fuck you, GGG. I get why you didn't want Harvest. I'm not dying on the Harvest crafting hill. But why can't I at least craft one shitty affix onto an item? Why is that a bad thing? One of the main reasons I spent a ton of time in Diablo 4 this season was the tempering, and how it can completely change your build or fill in gaps in armor or resistances. That shit was cool. Yet somehow we live in a world where Diablo...
Okay, I know where it's coming from now. Tempering for me is the worst thing that's ever happened in Diablo 4. It's not even the system per se, it's the way it's delivered. I hate the tempering. It's so frustrating. I got mad at that system so many times. You saw me play, right? You saw me how frustrated I became to that freaking thing, and he's feeling completely different. It's like basically just 180 degrees opposite of me. He likes the tempering. I hate it. He hates the crafting system in PoE 2. I love it. People are so different in their opinions and how they feel about things.
Diablo 4 has better crafting than Path of Exile?
Nope.
Don't worry, it gets worse.
I disagree. Completely disagree.
For those unaware, there being no loot in the game actually is fixable. You just have to get a bunch of increased rarity of items found on your equipment. In fact, Magic Find is so important that people are foregoing good items so that they can keep Magic Find items equipped, because having worse equipment is worth the trade-off of not having any loot. Ugh.
Actually, I understand why there's a trade-off. I just wish the Magic Find would be, added on top of your gear, like in Diablo 2. Like you probably could find some runes with Magic Find that could actually be I think it would be a better way of adding this. But I understand why they're doing this, because you need to make a choice, right? They just don't want the players to have everything fed in their mouth right off the bat. You're just like, okay, you can have everything for free or whatever. I do understand that vision. I just feel it would make the game better anyway to have the Magic Find on top of the things, like with a rune or something.
Okay, like mask off just for like 2 seconds. I just need a minute. I'm losing my mind as I'm writing this. Is this good game design? This is bad game design. This is just bad game design. There's no other way around it than a game that requires you to fix their shitty drops with affixes on your items is bad game design. That once again takes away choice. We don't get to choose how we're building our character because the only thing that matters is Magic Find. In fact, GGG knows.
Yeah, actually, it doesn't matter that much, because there was calculations that were made and people realized that there's a huge diminishing return past like 100%. Don't break your build more than 100%. It's not worth it. Basically, it's not going to change much. And even if you can just get at least 50%, which is not that much, you're going to see a difference right off the bat. So I don't think it's a big issue.
That this is toxic game design, because they removed increased item quantity from PoE 1 because it was toxic, and yet Magic Find is so bad for the game that the entire trade economy, which I don't use SSF by the way, is completely fucked. Like America levels of wealth disparity here.
It's only a level, 62 Saf.
He's showing Elon Musk, which actually doesn't know whatever he's talking about because we proved that Elon Musk didn't play his character. He lied. Oh, that's funny. But yeah.
Okay, moving on. Let's just rapid fire off some other remaining bad stuff on my list. You have to go to the well to refill pots. Just why? Why isn't returning to town good enough for you, GGG? Just another nail in the GGG wants you to play the game their way coffin. Rather than give us the obvious quality of life things like refilling pots automatically, they'd rather us drink from the well because immersion.
No, they are refilled automatically. You have some affixes on some flasks that they are refilled automatically. There are some way that you can refill them by killing stuff. It's like, there's just so many ways that you can refill them automatically. The well is just there to, example, in case you're in the middle of a fight and you don't have all, in your side to actually refill them, you can go back to town and refill them this way. It's just on top of something else. It's not the way. And like, what developer don't want you to play a game the way they designed it? Isn't that like just a weird take to have? I don't understand why he's repeating this since the beginning of the video, but I just feel like it's basically the point of every single game. If you're making a game, obviously you want the players to play the game the way you intended it to be. Am I crazy to think this? Like, I just feel it's common sense.
Charms are the most boring thing ever. I don't know how you took flasks and made it worse, but holy shit, are charms just the most uninspired design I've ever seen. I can't name a single person who actually knows if those things are proccing or not. Base movement speed is reduced for absolutely no reason.
They fixed this, by the way.
PoE 1 right now without any boots and see how fast you are. You zoom by default. Bosses' loot disappear if you die when their loot is dropped. I'm all about punishing players for dying. Hardcore SSF, by the way. But this ain't it. This feels like an unintended issue that wasn't play tested. Chests.
Yeah, that is a big issue. Like, I realized that at first. The first time I died to a boss, I got so good loot and I went back to pick it up and it was not there. And I was so mad because there was a unique in there. And I don't know if it was just a bug, like he said, it was like just a design flaw that was like overseen or whatever. But yeah.
Are completely useless in the game. Half the time a yellow chest drops you nothing, and all the time a blue chest drops you less than nothing. I don't know why you just wouldn't make it to where a yellow chest drops a guaranteed yellow item and a blue chest drops a guaranteed blue item, but here we are. This quest gives you 2k gold. There's an ascendancy for backpack. There is an ascendancy for backpack. I feel like I'm losing it. Here's the deal, guys. Will PoE 2 be good one day? Most likely. Will it be better than PoE 1? Probably. I know there are people out there saying GGG will fix it, give it time, it's still early access. And yeah, I know that. Hell, even while writing this, GGG has already patched out things that makes my video age a little poorly. And I'm sure in a year, this video will be irrelevant.
Then why did you post it if you're already aware that it's outdated? Just rework your video and try to patch and make your video up to date. Because if you are self-aware that this video will be probably badly understood by people because it's outdated at the time you're uploading it, upgrade it and don't upload it. That's how I feel about it. Just to complain. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Good night. Good night. Take care. Oh, yeah.
But you know what my main issue is with PoE 2? It's that everything you like about PoE 2 PoE 1 already did, but better. And every pitfall that PoE 1 learned over the years, PoE 2 is remaking those same mistakes.
I completely disagree. Everything I like from PoE 2, it's because it's so different from PoE 1. And I feel like if it was the case, if PoE 1 did everything so much better than PoE 2, even though I know it's a new game and there's the hype around it, there wouldn't be like, at the time we're talking right now, how many players are playing PoE 2 at the same time? Probably like still 200k. It's so freaking good after 2 months. It's great. It's awesome. It's incredible. If PoE 1 did so much better than PoE 2 on every single level, I highly doubt that there would still be so many players playing.
They gutted so many things to make PoE 2 that PoE 2 is just a poor imitation of PoE 1 right now. It's like if my blinker wasn't working on my car.
Yeah, it's so much done in bad faith, man.
They fixed the blinker but removed my chairs. I'm just genuinely baffled by so much game design choice of PoE 2 and how they seem to have not learned anything, and why the PoE 2 devs are scared of the community breaking their game and trivializing content and of power creep. In fact, they're so scared of power creep that they forgot to put in power into their game. PoE 2 devs want to control the narrative of how you play the game. And I get it, that's a developer's job, is to make sure that you're not completely breaking the game. But they went too far. They made levels way too long. They made drops too sparse. They made choices non-existent. And honestly, just PoE 1 did all those things better. I hope this comes across as a passionate rant from an ex-lover rather than a genuine critique from a game reviewer. I'm just stirring up shit because I want to stir up shit. And hey, I'm not here to yuck people's yum. If you
Okay,
enjoy the game,
at least he's self-aware. He just said it. All right, he's self-aware.
great. At the end of the day, I'm glad people are supporting GGG and playing a Path of Exile game, because that means my Path of Exile game gets better. Hopefully, if they didn't forget about it. And honestly, when I really zoom in and look at PoE 2, maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I was wrong about all this. Maybe, just maybe,
Oh my god.
I can enjoy PoE 2. Nah, fuck that shit. Play the song.
I have play tested it. I have tested it, and I don't like it. I don't like it. It's shit.
All right. So, yeah. Like I said, I just feel like most of it was trolling, but I still kind of feel like most of what he said, like he means it. But even though he's self-aware that, whatever. So, yeah, what did you think about it?